Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now getting closer to the end of March of 2023, and with The Mandalorian Season 3 Chapter 21 about to debut in a couple of days from now, we are finally getting into the last half of the third season by John and Dave, and what kind of things they're about to set up for the fourth season. Now, in case you guys did not know, we have Celebration happening next month in London that's going to actually have some revelations for the roadmap of the franchise and more. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, given that, yes, there has been a lot of things going on between, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni reviving Star Wars Legends and stuff around those lines to really get the ball rolling when it comes to the overall structure of the universe at hand. Now, one thing is that Kathleen Kennedy was recently questioned about the ACOLYTE and Skeleton Crew and what she actually thinks about the Star Wars fandom, stuff like that, and she didn't really have the nicest things to say again toward the Star Wars community, and it really does raise a couple of red flags about her mindset about what she's doing with the ACOLYTE, specifically also with the Skeleton Crew series, and more. So let's just dive right into all of this, because we know that Kathleen Kennedy has been pretty much, going around in circles when she talks about everything related to the ACOLYTE and Skeleton Crew and what she's trying to do by, completely just detaching from George Lucas's vision. Stuff like that is what she keeps going on about. But anyways, moving on to the next big thing here, what's even all the more intriguing, has a lot to do with Kathleen Kennedy really going on yet another tirade against the Star Wars fans. Now, with Kathleen Kennedy having many issues with the ACOLYTE and Skeleton Crew still to this day, she recently was questioned about those projects and the Star Wars fandom and went on to give a very harsh response to the community. Kennedy went on to state the following to the fans: "When I see the fan division, I can only blame the fans who cast so much criticism on what Ryan and JJ were trying to achieve with the franchise. It's the fans who put out their complaints about the sequels that I view as the problem, and the source of this community being so divided and difficult to mend together again, which seems impossible. You see, certain franchises have fandoms that tend to be stubborn, that have a certain belief of how things should be done, and there is no changing that mindset at all, and that to me is a big problem, and should not be tolerated when writing stories. We should never listen to fans, or those who think that they know what they are talking about. When I first came on board to handle the franchise with George, I knew he needed to stop interfering with Disney. Once he sold the franchise and handed Lucasfilm over, he couldn't stop handing concepts to us after we had already made the deal." Now, I want to just, quickly pause here till we get to the next thing about what Kennedy has to talk about. Now, she's really putting it out there that she believes that the division between the fans, alright, that we see to this day are caused by the fans that did not like the sequel trilogy movies. When in reality, what really happened was you had writers like J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson that had flawed visions, and on top of that, anything good, remotely good that J.J. wanted to do was shot down by Kathleen Kennedy. So it was, a mixture of JJ, Ryan, and Kathleen Kennedy's fault. And at the top of the list, I always say this, Bob Iger, for allowing all of this to happen. He's like the puppeteer pulling the strings of all three of these individuals, right? And it's those that really created the division. Alright, that's the ultimate truth. Sure, you got people that love the sequels, yes, and that's okay, but it's nowhere near as many that actually have issues with the sequel trilogy. And that's exactly why you see to this day so many fans just turning away from episodes 7 through 9, really not rewatching them as much when they appear on TV and stuff like that, and instead watching the prequels of the originals. So anyways, on to the next thing here. She goes on to elaborate things further. Now, we know that Kathleen Kennedy is having a lot of trouble with the ACOLYTE. She's going through so many reshoots and so many rewrites that it's really creating this, overworked phase for her where she has to really meet a deadline or else. Basically, if she doesn't meet a deadline for the show, Disney is really thinking about canceling it or massively delaying the series, perhaps at most to the very end of 2024. That's like the worst case scenario of a delay. But anyways, I digress. On to the next big thing here about what she had to say. She goes on to say things further. Fans need to realize that it's not about you. The franchise is not yours, and only the writers know what they are doing and talking about. Well, that's not necessarily always the case, right, guys? I mean, we saw Joby Harold and what he did with the Kenobi series and how a lot of fans really did not like that. And listen, if you like the Kenobi show, that's fine. I'm not saying that it's bad through and through every single second. It has its moments, sure. But thoroughly, it's just not a well-written, cohesive story. It's just not. So, that's just my 2 cents on things. But that's what Kathleen Kennedy says here, is that the franchise is not about us, it's not about the fans, it's about them. And I think that's where you run into the biggest mistake of all, is that when you look at other things out there, other franchises, like Sonic, or look at the Super Mario Bros. Movie, or even look at some of the Marvel projects before things started kind of going a little downhill there. They always cater to the fans, and they always cater to fans' demands and what they really wanted to see, either on the big screen or at home. And they, really delivered. So, anyways, she goes on to actually conclude, in order to reunite the fans, the only way by doing such a thing is to simply ignore all of their requests so that there is no one catering to one group or the other. So yes, I think that all issues aside, and how they all go back to how the fans have been acting in a very immature way toward our creators, and need to realize that it's just a series of films or shows, and that these are our visions to deal with. It's the fans who supported also Miss Carano that also created such a stir-up, and those who feel that bringing back those legend stories will resolve anything, which is not my plan with the ACOLYTE. So another 2 things that she brings up there. The fact that she says that the fans who supported Miss Carano, that's what she likes to call her, I guess, but Gina Carano, how fans supported her, created a bigger division, created a more toxic environment. Look, I mean, sure, there's fans that like her and don't like Gina, but it's not ultimately what led to fans liking or disliking certain Star Wars material, right? So, that's to the next thing, is that she believes that bringing back Star Wars Legends stories is not going to revive or resolve anything. And that's just another, big statement of hers to kind of just drive fans away from Legends at all. This is similar to how she said where, with the sequel trilogy, there was no source material to pull from and to use, and making it as if Legends never existed. So it's not a surprise that she would say that Legend stories will never resolve anything. And that just is not the case. A lot of fans love Legends. A lot of fans grew up with Legends. And John and Dave are people that are trying to revive those great stories from the 90s and the 2000s and such. So anyways, guys, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this whole scenario and what you have to say about Kathleen Kennedy's input on all of this. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Night to moon, we hear them moans again.